Okay, a video for all you coil spreaders. This radio has had a coil spreader. Don't know who it was. Lord knows how many different people and shops this radio may have been to in its life. But someone has been coil tweaking. And what they were coil tweaking for was maximum power. Now, on your watt meter on the radio, on an external watt meter like that, no doubt in my mind, it probably does show a little increase in power. The problem is, the power on the CB channel you're talking on has probably actually decreased, and the power on out in the 54 megahertz band, which is your second harmonic, has increased. So, inside radios, I'm going to try and make this simple for the electronically minded people. So when you mix frequencies together, when you amplify, there's all different ways of generating harmonic energy. And we don't want that, because we want our signals to be strong on the channel we're transmitting on, and we don't want anything else. Now in CB, because we're in the 27 megahertz range, most of your CB, there's a few below in 26, but most of it's in the 27 megahertz range. So the second harmonic is 2 times the frequency or the channel you're on. So 27 megahertz times 2 is 54 megahertz. And that's what this little circuit here, all these coils. Now back in the day you might have seen an actual tunable coil, and maybe 1 or 2 coils like this, but they've done away, I guess, with the tunable coils because they cost too much. They're cheap radios nowadays, so yeah, those things cost money, so they just slap in a couple more of these just coils of wire. But they work just fine. The problem is people spread them, because like I say, you spread it, you see your needle go up a little bit. But what I want to show is that's just ghost power, fake power, because all your gains are out in the 54 megahertz band, and you're either doing nothing for yourself on the CB band, on your actual channel, or you may actually be decreasing the power, because this is a low-pass filter circuit, okay? And what a low-pass filter circuit does is, the 27 megahertz, the channel you're talking on, it allows that basically to pass through unaffected, and once the frequency gets up to a certain point, this will start to basically absorb it, okay? And it's dissipated as heat. So it stops the 54 megahertz from getting through this circuit and out your antenna jack. But by spreading the coils, you're allowing that 54 megahertz energy to get through the circuit, and by tuning it, you can throw it out of balance, and you can actually, a lot of times, it can reduce the power on the CB channel. So, like I say, you're actually degrading your performance. So let's look at that. So we'll start out. Okay, so a good peak reading here. So we have right around, let me turn the mic gain down on this thing. So right around 29.1 dBm. So let's actually write that down. Get a little pad of paper here. We'll just stick it right here. Grab me a writing stick. So minus 29.1. Okay. Now that's not the actual output power, because it's actually running through an attenuator through a sample port. Okay, now we want to go out to 54 megahertz. So let's just put start at 54, stop at 55, so we can find it. Oh, there it is. Rather obvious. Get that centered up. That's fairly close. Okay, so right now we have, on the 54 megahertz band, we have minus 74 let's call it 5 dBm. Okay, now what I'm going to do is just squeeze those coils back together. Or actually, some of them may stay spread a little bit, But that's what we want to do, is we want to tune it. Oh, look at that already, just the first coil alone. There we go. Now we're starting to look good. Oh, look at that. Almost non-existent. And I'm just going back and forth between the coils, try spreading a little bit, squeezing it back together. That's why a lot of times when you look in a brand new factory radio, you'll see some of those coils that have a little bit, they'll be spread a little bit. And that's what they're doing. They're trying to get it down to the minimum on 54 megahertz. Looks like that's about all we're going to get out of it. So we're down to minus 90. It's bouncing around a good bit. I just call that right in the middle, around 94. So, you know, we started out at 54 megahertz at minus 74 and a half, and we're down to, say, about 94, so we've dropped 24 dB in the 54 megahertz band, which is what we don't want. So now, center frequency. And span still at 10. And channel on power, or power on channel, we're at, look at that, 29.12, maybe a little bit more now. And we started out with 29.1 dBm on channel. So, yeah, it's actually going, because it's bouncing up in 0.2 pretty steadily. So, honestly, that's such a small amount, you really wouldn't notice it. So, basically, we didn't gain anything. Actually, if anything, we might have lost a tiny amount of power on the CB channel, but by putting the coils back where they should be, we've completely eliminated the 54 megahertz. And the radio is doing what it's supposed to do. So here's what they look like now. So you can see I actually squeezed this one completely back together, this one's completely squeezed back together, and this one is spread a little bit. But like I say, that's why you'll occasionally see, well, not occasionally, pretty much all the time, when you look in a brand new radio right out of the box, you'll see these coils spread a little bit. Some of them, sometimes they won't be. Sometimes one of them will be spread, the rest of them won't. But that's what they're doing at the factory. Basically, the exact same thing I did. They're going to look at it on a spectrum analyzer, and spread or compress these coils until they completely remove as much of the 54 megahertz signal as they can, which is what we've accomplished. And like I say, honestly, we didn't lose anything on the CB band. If anything, we did gain a little bit, because like I say, it was bouncing pretty steadily up to 29.2. So, we gained a tenth of a dB. Nothing to write home about, but, that just goes to show, properly adjusted or out of whack, the only thing you're really affecting is this 54 megahertz signal. You can see huge difference there. No difference to speak of on CB. So all of that newfound power that was going to show on an analog meter was just on TV channels. So there's a little tip for you coil spreaders: stop spreading coils. And honestly, you're not going to get it any better than the factory did. And this is one of those things that really doesn't change over time. It's a piece of copper wire, honestly. It's not like a resistor or a lot of other components that the tolerances can change over the decades, and as the resistance value goes up or down. It's a coil of wire. It's pretty much, if it was made 40 years ago, it's probably honestly still fine just today. And if you don't have a spectrum analyzer, it's kind of hard to do that adjustment anyhow. Now, back in the day, in the 70s and in the 60s, you'd frequently see in service manuals where it would tell you to turn on a television and you'd put it on channel 2, and you would adjust that 54 megahertz trap circuit for a minimum amount of interference on a TV that was in the same room. So yeah, pretty much leave that alone. And actually, it looks like that ceramic cap, the top of it's broke off. I guess when somebody was spreading the coils, they pushed that capacitor back so far they snapped the top of it off, because you can see how it's got a little divot in the top. It doesn't look like it actually made it into the... That's just in the epoxy overcoating. It didn't actually make it into the value. But yeah, so watch shit like that. Hell, you can go breaking parts by spreading these blasted things. So there's a little tip for the coil spreaders. Don't do it. You're not gaining anything. If anything, the only thing you're going to do is reduce the amount of power that you're transmitting on the channel, and you'll start talking on television.